Hello everyone and welcome to the new House of Footy YouTube channel, the home of your footy fix. I'm your host Ari Stamatakos, and today, to kick off this new channel, we're going to be bringing you a video on the three-time premiership coach Damien Hardwick and where does his coaching future lie. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before we take a look at the future of Damien Hardwick, let's go back and look at the past and give a bit of context around his coaching future. Of course, we all know the history of Damien Hardwick. He finished his playing career in 2004, went straight into an assistant coach's role at Hawthorn from 2005 to 2009. He was a part of that Hawthorn 2008 premiership win as an assistant coach under Alistair Clarkson. He got his first senior coaching role at Richmond at the start of the 2010 season and coached them all the way up until the early third of the 2023 season, so basically 12 years. Of those 12 years, we all know he won 3 flags, played in 16 finals, and played finals in 80 years out of those 12. So we all know his honours, we all know his accolades, but let's start at the start of his Richmond journey, I should say, and let's take a look at the development of Damien Hardwick both as a person and as a coach. So let's take a look at the development of Damien Hardwick from the start of his Richmond coaching tenure all the way until the end. Now, as a coach, we all know the Richmond way of playing football, that kind of high tempo, hunting impacts mentality that won them those 3 flags in 4 years in the late 2010s. That was developed quite like overnight, it seemed. Like the game style from 2016 to 2017 was almost completely different. But we all saw the signs of it quite early on. In 2010, Richmond actually broke the records for the most amount of tackles in a game with 142. En route to a very impressive win against Port Adelaide, in Adelaide no less. So this Richmond way of playing football was kind of foreshadowed quite early on in Damien Hardwick's coaching tenure. He's gone on record multiple times and has self-admitted that he lost the person he was throughout his coaching career. We all know the stress and the kind of anguish that comes with coaching a very high reputation club like Richmond, a club that garners a lot of media scrutiny, especially when they aren't performing well. In an attempt to get the best out of his players and to get the most out of his players, he pushed them way too hard. He pushed them beyond their limits and forced them and was instructing them to do things that weren't in the repertoire of the players that he had at his disposal. He became a very unlikable coach and garnered a very unlikable and almost toxic culture in the Richmond Football Club that led to slow regression in their performances. Obviously in 2013 they finished 5th and should have beaten Carlton at the MCG in September, we all know that. And that 2013 season was pretty much the best it got up until 2016. 2014 saw a slow regression. 2015 saw an even bigger regression than 2016, where they eventually slipped out of finals. This was cultivated because of this culture around the Richmond Football Club that wasn't allowing them to express themselves and wasn't allowing them to get the best out of themselves and to play football in the way that they wanted to play football. In the off-season of 2016 into the pre-season of 2017, he and a core group of players made a pact almost and had a cultural shift and a cultural change around the Richmond Football Club. Damien Hardwick reverted back to the person he was at the start of his coaching journey and became a far more charismatic, became a far more likable coach, a likable person that made playing at Richmond and being a Richmond Football Club player fun again. That was the main kind of MO behind that big kind of playing style shift and the cultural shift for the Richmond Football Club between 2016 and 2017. He made sure that training was fun, he made sure that playing football was fun, and the main emphasis around being a Richmond Football Club player was that you wanted to come to work, you wanted to come to training, and you wanted to get the best out of yourself. His development into this very charismatic person, being able to get all the players to fully buy into the game style, buy into the Damien Hardwick system, allowed them to kick on in that 2017 season and have basically an overnight shift in the way that they were playing football, which had pretty much immediate success. We all know what the Richmond way of playing football is. It was a term coined by Damien Hardwick and has been taken on by the media. This high-octane, high-tempo, high-energy football, that surge football, that hunting impacts style football gave Richmond a lot of success in the late 2010s, and it started pretty early in 2017. They blew Carlton off the park in round 1 with a very unusual unusual style of football that relied on their system getting the job done and allowing their star players like Dustin Martin, who had a career best year in 2017, giving the players like him the license to thrive. It was a game style that relied on a lot of imperfections and that thrived on imperfections, if anything. Now Damien Hardwick has gone on record to saying the game style that won them those flags was reliant on their role players. We saw the likes of Josh Caddy have breakout years, the likes of Dan Butler, Daniel Rioli, these type of players have breakout years, and this system kept Richmond in games, and this allowed the likes of Jack Revolt, Trent Cotchin, Dustin Martin, even Alex Rance, their star players, to win them the games. It was a very very selfless. It was a system based on a lot of selflessness and was based around getting their best players in the best positions at all times. In this season, we saw the individual performances of a lot of players change and the roles of a lot of players change. We saw Dustin Martin have one of the best individual seasons you'll ever see from an AFL footballer, winning the Brownlow medal quite convincingly. Trent Cotchin became a far more selfless footballer, and in doing so became a far better leader and captain, allowing this young Richmond side to thrive through his leadership. Jack Riewoldt, despite being very, very good this season, despite carrying a big burden of being the only tall forward in that system, basically, he only kicked 54 goals for the year, his second lowest tally ever since he started playing full consistent seasons for Richmond. However, despite the slight potentially underperformance of their star players in a sense, this saw the rise of the likes of Dan Butler, Jason Castagna, Josh Caddy and Daniel Rioli all having career best seasons to date, with all four of them kicking 20 plus goals for the year. The epitome of their role players and how crucial they were, in my opinion, was the likes of Jacob Townsend and Jack Graham. Townsend obviously coming in for the final 5 games of the year, kicking 15 goals in those 5 games, and Jack Graham having one of the better final series you're ever going to see from a role player and a player who would come in only playing a handful of games. So we obviously all know just how big the role players were for Richmond, and we all know just how important they were in the Richmond style and the Richmond way of playing football. So we've spoken about the past, and before we speak about the future, let's speak about the present and what will be different this time when Damien Hardwick eventually returns to coaching. Now, firstly, straight away, he's already gone through his development process, both as a person and as a coach. He's already fully formed and fully fledged. He is Damien Hardwick. This is what he is. This is what he's about, both as a person and as a coach. He'll be looking to come into a side and implement his tactics and his philosophy straight away, with the hopes of immediate success. He now through his development, he now has those man management skills and those soft skills in order to really kind of fast track that process and streamline that process, to really cultivate a good culture and allow all the players that he has to get behind his system and get behind his philosophy straight away. Furthermore, another thing that has changed is the AFL landscape. The game has changed ever since Damien Hardwick started back in 2010. Dimmer's Richmond that won those 3 flags in 4 years almost was the catalyst for a new era for football, that fast-moving crash and bash style of football that relies on quick ball movement and a surge style of football, that getting the ball forward quickly kind of movement and that philosophy. In 2017, Richmond almost exclusively lined up with one key forward being Jack Riewoldt and the rest being small/medium-sized forwards. This is a similar approach to how the likes of Collingwood have lined up with in recent times, with many teams looking to implement a similar approach that relies a lot on quick ball movement, getting the ball down to your forwards quickly and allowing that surge football to take effect and really give them a lot of success in that front half. So now, with all of that saying, let's take a look at a couple of clubs who I think are potential contenders for Damien Hardwick's signature from the year 2024 and onward. So I'm going to give a couple of suggestions, and we're going to finish things off with the club that I think Damien Hardwick will coach and should coach for the future. So let's start things off by looking at the Carlton Football Club. Now, as a Carlton supporter, this obviously will be quite interesting to see, but this probably strikes the balance between having a semi-realistic chance of happening and the best chance of Dimmer adding another flag to his resume. Because you look at the list, it's primed and ready to go. The list has been underperforming for quite a while, obviously not having made finals since 2013. And this season, Michael Voss has been under a lot of pressure, having underperformed this year, and it will be a very unlikely chance that Carlton will make finals. There's talent on every line within that list. Obviously, the midfield is very industrious, very brutal. Obviously, Cripps, Matt Kennedy, George Hewitt as well, and they have the clash on the outside with Adam Cherry, who's having career best year, and Sam Walsh, who is finding form. We all know those twin towers up front with Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow, with the fast ball movement that Damien Hardwick will 100% implement if he was to coach Carlton. There could be a very tasty proposition for those two players who will be looking at the field ahead of them and thinking, yeah, we're going to be kicking bucket loads of goals every week. So Carlton potentially strikes the balance, like I said, between having a semi-realistic chance of happening and the best chance of Dimmer adding another flag, although I don't think that is where Damien Hardwick will be coaching, and nor do I think that's where Damien Hardwick should be coaching in 2024. Moving on to another club who could get his signature, but I also doubt it would happen, and that's West Coast. It's probably not going to happen. I don't think it's the place for him at the moment. I don't think Damien Hardwick will be looking to go through another long rebuild. The West Coast rebuild will probably last 5, 6, 7, even 8 years at absolute minimum, in my opinion. Damien Hardwick will be looking to have success straight away, and I don't think West Coast's list at the moment has the ability to have success straight away. Whilst, of course, Dimmer's man management skills could potentially get a lot out of those younger other players like Ruben Jimmy and Elijah Hewitt, Oscar Allen as well. I don't think West Coast is the place for Damien Hardwick. So despite a lot of talk around Damien Hardwick going to West Coast will inevitably happen, I don't think it's the place for him. Let's take a look at another club that is within contention, although I don't think it's going to happen considering just how good they've been this season, and that is Port Adelaide. Now, it is very unlikely considering how good Port have been under Hinkley this season, but there's always an unknown around Port Adelaide. Ken Hinkley still hasn't re-signed, although there are rumours that he will quite soon, but at the time of recording, he still hasn't re-signed. So I think it's worth bringing up the conversation, but if it happens, I don't think it is, but if it would happen, the personnel differences and similarities are quite there, in my opinion. You look at Jason Horne-Francis, he has the ability to be the next Dustin Martin-esque kind of player. Maybe not as good as Dustin Martin, but obviously can provide that mid-forward kicking goals, that medium-sized forward, can take a mark inside 15, can be that real explosive burst player. The defence has an incredible interceptability, very similar to that of Grimes and Alex Rance. And that that midfield has probably the biggest difference, in my opinion. That midfield of Rozee, Butters, it is far more attacking, far more has a lot of flair about them when you look at the Richmond midfield of Prestia, Cochin, Graham, Lambert, very industrious, very workmanlike. So probably that's the biggest difference in my opinion, but it would be interesting to seeing Damien Hardwick using that us against them mentality with that Port Adelaide team would be quite interesting, but I don't think it's going to happen despite how fun I think that Port Adelaide team would be under Dimmer. So the last team I think that is worth talking about, although I don't think that it's going to happen, is Fremantle. Now, with Justin Longmire underperforming this season with Fremantle, of course, there will be speculation about his job security, although I don't think it will happen. I think this is probably this is very, very far out, a very far stretch in my opinion. He's built something quite good with this young squad despite underperforming this year. Freo should stick by him, and I think he's the man to lead them forward. If Dimmer was to make the move to Perth, I think the squad at his disposal would be pretty good. You look at the likes of Matt Taberner, he's the perfect backboard for the likes of Sam Swinkowski, Lockie Schultz, Michael Walters, and Frederick as well. Banfield, Clark, Young, these other young players who can really provide that energy and that speed that allows that quick ball movement, especially going forward. And you look at the likes of Jai Miss, who is really who's a forward for the future, in my opinion. So despite Freo's list being very good, and despite Dimmer being a potentially good fit for that Fremantle list, I don't think Justin Longmure's job is in any real any real threat. So I think this is very, very unlikely, but it would be fun to see nonetheless. So let's look at the club that I think is the perfect fit for Damien Hardwick, and that is the Gold Coast Suns. Now, with Stuart Dew's job under an immense amount of pressure, this, in my opinion, is the perfect job for Damien Hardwick. This list has underperformed for the best part of 3 years now. They're a list that needs direction and guidance, something that Dimmer can offer in spades, as well as a tactical nous that will allow their X factor and their star players to thrive. The industrious midfield of Touk Miller, Noah Anderson, and Matt Rowell will be superb under Damien Hardwick's real workman-like attitude to football, as well as Bailey Humphrey has got a young Dustin Martin written all over him, in my opinion. Collins and Ballard are super underrated key defensive partnership that has Dylan Grimes and Alex Rance written all over them, and Ben King is a fantastic key forward who can provide a contest at every opportunity and get the ball down to their smalls, who have provided a massive amount of headaches for plenty of defences this season. Jack Lukosius is an ideal third to second tall who can kick you 30, 35, 40 goals a year. This, in my opinion, will be the ideal move for Damien Hardwick. He can go up to the Gold Coast, enjoy the sun, enjoy the lifestyle, whilst also coaching a very young, enthusiastic list that, in my opinion, has the opportunity to thrive and has the opportunity to really break into the top 8 very, very soon. The likes of Marby Ochol and Brendan Ellis are already there, so that will allow the transition for both Dimmer and the players to kind of move in quite seamlessly. This, in my opinion, is the perfect job for Damien Hardwick. So that is all for the first video here on the House of Footy YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what job you think Damien Hardwick should take for the back end of 2023 or even 2024 and beyond. Make sure you like, subscribe to the new channel. Any support would be majorly appreciated. See you guys next time, and goodbye.